If you're over 70, you've earned more than just rest. You've earned the right to feel light, free, and deeply at peace. After decades of striving, loving, giving, losing, and surviving, you deserve to wake up each day without the weight of things that no longer serve your soul. But too many carry burdens into this chapter that were meant to be set down long ago. Emotional clutter, quiet regrets, silent comparisons, and they wonder why joy feels just out of reach. The truth? At this stage, happiness has less to do with what you gain and everything to do with what you're finally willing to release. What you're about to hear isn't fluffy motivation or feel-good fluff. It's a wake-up call, a soul-level recalibration, a guide to help you reclaim the energy, clarity, and inner peace that this sacred stage of life was always meant to offer. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover the one shift, the final most powerful mindset shift that rewires how you experience joy forever. It's the truth no one says out loud, but everyone desperately needs. And once you hear it, you'll never see your life the same again. Regret is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry, not because it weakens your bones, but because it haunts your spirit. It doesn't live in your muscles, it lives in your memory. And over time, it sneaks into quiet moments, into still nights, into long silences, whispering, "You should have." You think about the words you never said, the chances you never took, the time you never got back. You replay the conversations, the decisions, the roads you didn't travel, and before you know it, the present is no longer yours. You've handed it over to a past you cannot rewrite. But here's the truth most people are too afraid to say out loud. You can't fix yesterday. It's already gone. No matter how many times you mentally rewind the film, the ending remains the same. Regret is like a movie on loop, and every time you press play, it drains just a little more joy from your today. It tightens your chest, clouds your thoughts, anchors you to a place your soul no longer belongs. You're not aging, you're carrying weight that was never meant to be permanent. We all have things we wish we could do differently. That's not weakness, that's humanity. It's a sign that you've grown, that your perspective has widened. But regret becomes toxic the moment you let it define you. When you start believing your worst moment speaks louder than all the good you've done, when you confuse a single chapter with your entire story, that's a lie. You are not what happened. You are what you've chosen to become afterward. The strange irony is that the very events we regret most often carry the deepest wisdom. The missteps, the silence, the missed embraces. Yes, they hurt, but they also sculpt us. They carve understanding into our bones. They teach us to love deeper, to listen harder, to be kinder with others and with ourselves. Without the stumbles, there would be no stillness. Without the mess, no message. So why bury yourself in shame? Why let regret a ghost hold the pen while you're still writing your story? Forgiveness isn't a gift you give others. It's a lifeline you give yourself, not to excuse the past, but to stop letting it bleed into every corner of your now. The version of you that didn't know better, they're gone. The one who didn't speak up, didn't act fast enough, didn't love bravely, that version lived in a moment that no longer exists. You are here now, and the only question that matters is, what will you do with this version of you? You cannot change the ending of a story that has already been written, but you can change the meaning you give it. You can decide that regret won't be your prison, but your teacher. That reflection will replace rumination. That growth will replace guilt. You don't need to forget your past, but you must stop living in it. Your body is here. Your breath is now. And every second you spend wrapped in should-haves is a second stolen from what you could still create, still give, still feel. Let go of I should've, replace it with now I know. Let go of I failed, replace it with I learned. Let go of it's too late, replace it with it starts now. You are not here to live in reverse. You are here to rise forward. Regret does not create peace. Reflection does. Reflection says, I see what happened. I take responsibility. But I carry the lesson not the shame. And that shift, that sacred shift, becomes your compass. It guides how you speak, how you forgive, how you walk through whatever time you still have left with more grace and far less grief. That's wisdom. That's the gift aging was always meant to bring. Not flawlessness, but perspective. And here's the part no one tells you. Most of the people you think you've let down, they already forgave you. They moved on. They saw the good in you even when you couldn't. The only one still punishing you is you. You don't have to keep carrying that. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. And being whole means honoring your regrets, not as life sentences, but as lessons. Your worst days do not define you. They refine you. So stop dragging the weight. Set it down. Look at it, bless it, and let it be part of your becoming, not your burden. Because the life ahead of you needs your full presence. And you can't be fully present. If your spirit is still shackled to what's behind you, you are not what you regret. You are what you've learned, what you've survived, and what you choose to become now. So now that you've set down regret, that heavy, invisible anchor, you'll begin to notice something else. The air around you feels a little clearer. The weight in your chest loosens. And in that space, another quiet burden begins to surface. The constant need to be right. It sounds harmless, even noble at times. After all, you've lived. You've seen things. You've gathered decades of experience, wisdom carved from pain and joy alike. But here's the gentle truth. The need to be right can become a subtle thief of peace, especially as we grow older. There is a quiet kind of strength that emerges with age, not from raising your voice, but from lowering your need to win. At some point, as the years collect and you've watched enough seasons turn, you realize that peace and being right often stand on opposite sides of the room. And more often than not, peace is the one worth walking toward. In our younger years, we argue to prove. We correct to feel intelligent. We defend our ideas like shields, afraid that being wrong means being less. But as the calendar pages turn, you begin to see the cost. You remember the debates that ended in distance, the final word that came at the expense of connection, the truth that, while accurate, left the room colder instead of kinder. Especially after 70, you begin to understand what most people spend a lifetime missing. Choosing silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It takes a rare kind of strength to pause when someone says something wrong, not because you agree, but because you recognize that correcting them would cost more than it's worth. It might ignite ego, create tension, or shut down. A moment that could have been meaningful. It serves your pride, not your peace. Letting go of the need to be right doesn't mean you stop caring about truth. It means you've stopped sacrificing serenity to prove it. Because most people won't remember what you corrected, but they will remember how they felt in your presence. Were they heard or were they judged? Were they welcomed or were they lectured? Every time you resist the urge to correct, you create space for respect to grow, for conversation to breathe, for the relationship to deepen. And ironically, the less you insist on being right, the more people start to listen. Not because your voice is louder, but because your presence is lighter. There's dignity in allowing others to hold their view, even when it's flawed. You begin to see that every person carries their own lens, shaped by pain, time, and upbringing. And sometimes what they need isn't correction, it's compassion. They don't need another fact, they need your patience, your grace, your steady, unshakable calm. And yes, this is hard, especially when you know you're right, especially when misinformation is spreading, when someone you love is making a poor choice, when silence feels like surrender. But discernment is the elder's gift. You've earned the wisdom to choose your battles carefully, to speak only when it elevates the moment and not when it merely inflates your ego. Not every mountain is worth climbing, not every debate is worth winning, and not every wrong needs to be righted, especially when the cost is your peace. This is even more true with family. with younger generations who see the world differently, with old friends who've taken new paths. Let them speak, let them stretch, let them stumble if they must. Your silence isn't defeat, it's maturity. It means you've climbed enough mountains to know which ones aren't worth the climb. You no longer need to dominate the room. You don't need the sharpest comeback. You don't need to fix every flawed opinion. You just need to be the calmest presence in the space. Because calm speaks louder than correctness. Presence, true, grounded, loving presence, speaks louder than pride. And when you become that grounded presence, you give others permission to breathe around you. You become the safe space they seek, not the storm they avoid. That's impact. That's legacy. So breathe, listen, smile. Let the breeze of someone else's idea pass without resistance and walk away with your energy intact. Walk away knowing that not every truth needs a tongue. Some are best spoken through stillness, because this chapter of your life, it's not about proving anymore. It's about becoming. And once you've released the need to be right, once you've traded ego for inner ease, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to hear the silence. You start to feel the space. But then you also start to notice all the noise that's still there, not the loud kind, the subtle kind, the clutter, because even if your heart is lighter, your life may still feel heavy. And that weight? Often, it's not what's on your calendar. It's what's in your drawers, your closets, your garage, your thoughts. It's the clutter, physical and mental, that silently steals your clarity, your energy, and your joy. Let's start with what you can see. Walk through your home and really look. Not just glance, look. The piles of paper you've promised to sort one day, the clothes with tags still on, the shelves filled with trinkets you forgot you had, the old gifts you kept out of guilt, the manuals for appliances you haven't owned in years. None of it looks overwhelming at first, but every object you hold onto for the wrong reason becomes a quiet decision delayed, a corner of energy unresolved, a whisper of tension every time you walk by. And over the years, that adds up. Every drawer you avoid, every cabinet you dread opening. Your brain registers all of it. Even if your eyes ignore it, your nervous system doesn't. You feel it as pressure, as resistance, as "I'm too tired to deal with that today." But here's the truth. Clearing your space isn't about being trendy or achieving Instagram-worthy minimalism. It's about liberation, because every object you let go of creates room to breathe, to move, to think, to feel again. Especially now in the later chapters of life, cognitive clarity matters more than ever. Decision fatigue is real. A cluttered environment leads to a cluttered mind. But when your space is intentional, clean, peaceful, your thoughts start to follow. Your breath deepens, your shoulders drop, your spirit softens, the outer mirrors the inner. Always. But clutter doesn't just live in your home, it lives in your head too. Mental clutter is harder to spot, but its effects run deeper. Old arguments you still replay, harsh words you still regret, worries about things that haven't even happened, guilt you've worn like a second skin, grudges you've kept quiet but never released. These aren't harmless habits. They're anchors. They tether your energy to places you can't grow from. They keep your mind spinning when all it wants is stillness. You feel tired, distracted, foggy, and often it's not age. It's overload. Mental clutter is sneaky. It disguises itself as preparation, as planning, as being responsible. But underneath it all is usually fear. Fear of change, fear of letting go, fear that if you release it, you'll lose something meaningful. But you won't lose. You'll gain. Letting go is not erasing your past. It's honoring your present. So, start small. One drawer, one shelf, one outdated belief. Ask yourself, do I need this? Does this serve me now? Or have I simply gotten used to its weight? Then breathe and release. Feel that moment, that shift, that lightness. That's your spirit rising again, because every time you discard an object or disrupt an old thought pattern, you're telling your brain, we are no longer stuck. We are here. We are free. Simplicity is not emptiness. Simplicity is space with purpose. It's not about less for the sake of less. It's about less so you can feel more clarity, more connection, more capacity to truly live. This is not just about your closet. It's about your consciousness, because life after 70 isn't about holding on to everything you've ever touched, loved, or feared losing. It's about creating room for something new, something lighter, something truer to who you are now. You are not defined by the boxes in your garage or the memories in your attic. You are defined by your presence, by the energy you bring into a room, by the calm that others feel when they sit beside you. And yes, it can feel scary. Letting go always does. Sometimes that pile of stuff feels like a timeline of your life, like proof that you were here, that you mattered. But your impact isn't in the objects you've kept, it's in the presence you carry. So clear the space in your home, in your mind, in your heart, because the lighter you travel, the farther you go. And there is still so much ahead of you to experience. But you can't step into what's next if your hands are still full of what no longer fits. And once you begin to clear the clutter from your shelves and your spirit, something else starts to stir. With fewer distractions around you and less noise within you, the mirror of your life becomes clearer. You see yourself more fully, but with that clarity comes a subtle question. Am I doing enough? It arrives quietly, in whispers. It slips in when you scroll past a friend's vacation photos or hear someone talk about their new lake house or their grandkids who visit every weekend without fail. Suddenly, a soft ache rises. Should I be doing more? This is the next burden. We must release comparison, even in your 70s, even in your 80s, even when you know better. That old voice still shows up. It doesn't shout like it did in your youth. It murmurs now, a subtle form of doubt. Have I fallen behind? But here's the sacred truth, one I need you to let all the way into your bones. After 70, there is no such thing as behind. There is no race, no scoreboard, no ladder to climb, no scale to weigh your value. Your life is not a competition. It's a work of art, one only you could paint. The more you measure it against someone else's brushstrokes, the more you lose sight of your own masterpiece. What others are doing with their age has nothing to do with what you're meant to do with yours. Their energy, their finances, their relationships, their health, none of it matches your exact story. You do not live in their body. You do not walk in their shoes. You do not wake with their thoughts. And so trying to match their path will only throw you off your own. Comparison doesn't just steal your joy, it poisons your peace. Not because your life is lacking, but because your attention is misdirected. It pulls you away from what is working, from the beauty in your own rituals, your slow mornings, your warm cup of tea, your deep inner wisdom that no Instagram post can capture. It blinds you to what already is, a life rich with meaning if only you'd stop looking over your shoulder. So, how do we remove comparison? First, by catching it in the act. Notice when it creeps in. Is it after a conversation with someone who seems more active? After seeing a post that makes your life feel quiet by contrast? Don't shame yourself for feeling it. Just interrupt the loop. Tell yourself gently but firmly, that's their journey. This is mine, and this journey matters. Then look inward. Take inventory of what you've built, survived, and endured. Not just the visible things, the emotional battles, the quiet resilience, the ways you've held others together when you were falling apart inside. These are victories that don't show up on highlight reels. These are the foundations of your strength. You've lived through seasons others wouldn't understand. You've overcome storms others never saw. So why let a fleeting glimpse into someone else's chapter make you question the power of your own book? And finally, anchor yourself in presence. Ask yourself, what brings me peace today? What gives me joy? What would make me proud? Not in comparison, but in truth. Maybe it's a walk through the neighborhood, a call to someone who needs your voice, a moment spent mentoring someone younger who's still figuring it all out. Those are the real victories, not flashy, not loud, but deeply felt and deeply needed, because Aging is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more yourself, more honest, more at ease, more free from the illusions that kept you chasing someone else's pace for far too long. At this stage, the goal is not to match anyone. It's to live in an alignment, to focus only on what matters, to stop trading your peace for illusions that were never yours to begin with. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly on time because you are still here, still breathing, still becoming, and that means life has not finished its work through you. So don't let your worth be defined by someone else's chapter. Let it be defined by your truth, your rhythm, your capacity to remain rooted while the world keeps rushing, because your path is sacred. And the moment you stop measuring it, you finally start living it. And once you've removed comparison, once you've let go of that invisible race, something even deeper awakens inside you, a quiet, undeniable knowing. I still have something to give. It doesn't roar. It doesn't demand. It whispers in the stillness, in the spaces where regret once echoed and comparison once festered. It whispers, there's more in you, and it's right. Because somewhere along the way, many people begin to dim their own light. Not because the light is gone, but because the world tells them age equals invisibility. That after a certain number, your value fades, your relevance diminishes, your best years are behind you. But that is the great lie. The truth is, your age is not a reason to shrink. It is your advantage. Right now, inside you, there are gifts. Gifts that have been forged through decades of living, breaking, healing, rising. They are not theories, they are truths. Hard-earned, time-tested, soul-deep truths the world desperately needs, but they only have power if you share them. Because unused gifts don't disappear quietly. They ache, they stir, they make you restless in the silence. You've felt it. That pull in your chest when you sit still too long, that itch in your spirit that whispers, I still have more to give. That voice is not a warning, it's an invitation. You still have time, not for everything, but for what matters. Maybe it's that small garden you always wanted to start, the story buried inside your chest that aches to be told, the recipe your grandmother passed down that no one else remembers. Or maybe it's your presence, the kind that makes someone younger feel seen for the first time. That is legacy. That is impact. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you give away while you're still alive. And the world? It doesn't need another trend. It needs your truth. There are people right now, in your family, your community, maybe even halfway across the world, struggling with battles you've already overcome. They don't need perfection. They need you, your story, your grace, your wisdom spoken in a moment they didn't even know they needed, but they will never receive it if you keep it locked inside. So speak, share, teach, mentor, laugh out loud, fix something with your hands, tell someone what you've learned, even if they don't ask. Because when you give again, not from ego but from soul, you come alive again, your energy rises. Your shoulders straighten, your smile deepens. You remember who you are and don't underestimate the small things. Sometimes the smallest gesture carries the biggest ripple. A story told in passing. A look that says, I've been where you are. A handwritten note, a home-cooked meal. A moment of listening without judgment. That's real power. That's real presence. But in order to give from a full heart, you must also look at what and who is still draining you. Some weight doesn't come from objects or memories. It comes from relationships, from people whose presence shrinks you, exhausts you, or makes you feel like you're always walking on eggshells. Even if you've known them for decades, even if they're family, it does not make you unkind to step away. It makes you wise. Because love does not require the sacrifice of your spirit. Protect your peace. Set boundaries with grace. Your energy is sacred. Spend it where it's honored. And finally, release the fear of aging. Your wrinkles are not flaws. They are stories. proof you've laughed, cried, lived, survived. Your slower steps are not signs of weakness. They are reminders of how far you've walked. The world tells you aging is decline. But the deeper truth? Aging is awakening. You are not running out of time, you're running out of reasons to waste it. You are not too old to grow, to change, to forgive, to move, to try something new, to start again. You are not too late. You are right on time for everything that still matters. So take a breath. Look at all that you've released, the regret, the ego, the noise, the clutter, the comparisons. Feel the lightness of your soul returning home to itself. And now that you've cleared the space, fill it with presence, with purpose, with peace. Because the world doesn't need you to be younger. It needs you to be fully here. You were never meant to fade. You were meant to shine differently, softer, steadier, and stronger than ever before.